Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving deep today. We are getting into one of the absolute most intense, incredibly dense, and frankly, emotionally exhausting sequences in the entire Infinitum campaign. We're talking, of course, about the sheer devastation of Session 18. Now, if you've been following the journey of the Holy Crusaders, you know by now that this massive multiplayer online VR game is absolutely no joke. The stakes are so profoundly real, and the server mechanics? Totally unforgiving. But the events that actually unfold in Session 18, they don't just challenge our heroes, they literally redefine the entire game. Today, we are going to map out all of it, the incredible tactical highs, the crushing, inescapable lows, and those jaw-dropping narrative twists that literally left the players completely, physically exhausted in real life by the time they logged off. So get comfortable, because this is a masterclass in how a virtual world can just turn entirely upside down in the blink of an eye.
So, the crucial theme we really need to explore today starts with a massive fundamental shift in power. You have to ask yourself, what happens when the ultimate hunters suddenly become the entertainment? Right? Up until this exact point in the campaign, the Holy Crusaders have been the ones in the driver's seat. They've been confidently pushing the narrative forward. They've been the proactive heroes of this VR universe. Think about it. Hunting down goblin raiding parties in the Whispering Woods, systematically clearing out the haunted mansion of Lord Vane, tracking down those ultra-rare server crystals, and fearlessly taking on mind flayers. They built their agency through blood and steel. But then we hit Session 18, and that script isn't just flipped, it is violently torn up. The control they've worked so incredibly hard to establish is ripped right out from under them. They go abruptly from being the pursuers to being the helpless prey, and ultimately to being nothing more than a bloody spectacle for a deeply, deeply sinister audience.
But actually, before the physical swords even start swinging, this session kicks off with a really heavy dose of psychological horror. So as the human players were sleeping in real life, Avia, who plays the Dragonborn barbarian Antonella, actually left her VR headset on. And through the static, she experienced this incredibly chilling, unprompted dream. The non-playable characters, the supposedly soulless NPCs of Infinitum, were literally begging her for help. They were saying, "We're trapped. Infinitum isn't what you think it is." Wow. But the players, they're eager to just continue their campaigns, so they kind of brush off this nightmare to go get their next mission from the captain of the guard. And he tasks them with investigating these rumors of Draw kidnapping travelers on the northern country roads. But despite brushing it off, that creeping sense of dread, that unsettling, heavy feeling that the very code of the game itself is fundamentally broken or haunted, it just hangs heavily over the entire party as they leave the safety of the kingdom of Fantasia.
Well, that creeping dread, it is very quickly validated once they hit the road. The party travels north, and they make a really smart, tactical decision to set up camp without lighting a campfire as the sun sets. They are hunting the elusive drow, right? Broadcasting their location with a giant light would be a total rookie mistake. So Druendar the Ranger takes the first watch, counting on his high perception stats to keep them safe. But suddenly, out of nowhere, the area goes absolutely pitch black. And I'm not just talking about, the natural dark of a moonless night. No, this is a magical, consuming, suffocating blackness that blots out even the stars above them. The sensory deprivation is immediate and terrifying. Before Druendar can even draw his bow, this unknown force begins striking the party with terrifying precision. You can literally hear the heavy thuds of armor hitting the dirt and the muffled cries of the spellcasters. Druendar actually manages to stay up the longest, just screaming blindly into the void trying to wake his teammates, but even he is eventually overwhelmed by this unseen enemy. And when they finally regain consciousness, the groggy party finds themselves completely stripped of all agency, locked tightly inside this cramped stone room behind a massive, unyielding metal door.
Okay, so just picture waking up in that claustrophobic room. Absolute panic sets in. But surprisingly, when they check their inventory, they realize they still have all of their weapons and armor. Now, why on earth would you arm a prisoner? Well, the answer reverberates through the thick stone walls as the booming voice of an unseen announcer hypes up a roaring, unseen crowd. Yeah, they haven't just been ambushed and kidnapped. They've been drafted into a brutal underground tournament. The announcer enthusiastically introduces the competitors to the screaming audience, and the lineup is terrifying. The Undead Horde, the Stalwart Giants, the Arcane Casters, and finally, the Holy Crusaders. As soon as their guild name echoes through that blood-stained arena, the giant metal door holding them captive just grinds open. And there is absolutely no time to prep. Zero. No time to cast long defensive buffs, no time to huddle up for a strategy. They are thrust immediately into a chaotic, blindingly bright four-way battle royale against some of the most terrifying, high-level factions in the entire game.
So, how do you even begin to triage a battlefield that's erupting with 3 different enemy armies? Stepping out onto the sand, the party instantly recognizes the dual threats dominating the arena. On one flank, you have the stalwart giants. These are towering, massive physical beasts built for the sole purpose of crushing their enemies into paste. And they immediately go to work doing exactly that to the undead horde. It is this visceral, terrifying display of power as the giants literally rip zombies and skeletons apart, shattering bones and just throwing the rotting remains across the arena. But on the opposite flank, standing ominously at the edge of all this carnage, are the arcane casters. So while the giants represent this overwhelming, blunt physical force, the casters represent devastating surgical mental manipulation. Now, the Holy Crusaders correctly identify that the magic users, who are completely untouched by the physical melee, are the bigger immediate threat. But even with that quick tactical realization, they are entirely unprepared for the casters' sinister opening move. And here it is. This is the brutal narrative twist that turns the session from a tough, gritty fight into an absolute, literal nightmare. The arcane casters don't just throw fireballs or lightning bolts at them. No, they surgically hack into the minds of the party's 2 powerhouse barbarians. Antonella and Barkan are instantly mind-controlled. Their eyes just glaze over, and suddenly the Crusaders aren't just fighting enemy mages anymore, they are fighting their own frontline fighters. The panic here is so palpable. Barkan brings his massive enchanted great axe violently down toward Captain Dashtu, the fragile wizard of the group. Antonella's heavy broadsword is swinging wildly at the rest of the squishy backline. It is absolute terrifying pandemonium. Brother Ezekiel, their newly recruited cleric, is just screaming as he desperately burns through every single ounce of his healing magic just to keep the conscious members of the party from being slaughtered by their best friends. I mean, through sheer, desperate luck, they barely managed to defeat the arcane casters while simultaneously dodging Barkan and Antonella's enraged, incredibly lethal attacks. Okay, so with the casters dead on the arena floor, you'd think the mind control would snap, right? Like, spellcaster dies, spell breaks. Wrong. Barkan and Antonella are still thoroughly enraged. Their programming is completely locked in, and they are still swinging wildly at anyone near them. And, to make matters infinitely worse, the stalwart giants have just finished wiping the floor with the undead horde and are now turning their attention directly to the players. So now, the battered, totally resource-drained Holy Crusaders are facing down massive, blood-soaked giants and their own crazed barbarians. This is the moment where Volha the Paladin absolutely shines, executing a flawless split-second tactical maneuver. It's like watching a seasoned sports commentator break down a brilliant play. Let's look at how she saves the day here. Volha sees this incredibly narrow opening. She orders the conscious party members into a dead sprint, pulling the pursuing, mindless barbarians directly behind them. They run completely around the stalwart giants, effectively dragging their crazed friends right into the path of these massive behemoths. The giants are suddenly taking aggro from both sides. Barkan and Antonella mindlessly begin hacking at the giants' colossal legs, while the rest of the conscious party unleashes range attacks from a safe distance. The giants fall really quickly to this brilliant pincer maneuver, and only once the giants are finally down is the exhausted party forced to wail on their own friends, basically beating Barkan and Antonella until they fall unconscious in the sand, which finally allows Brother Ezekiel to heal them back to their senses. Honestly, it is an absolute masterclass in turning a fatal disadvantage into a weapon.
So the dust finally settles. The party stands victorious, panting heavily, entirely surrounded by the shattered wreckage of 3 enemy factions. The arena erupts into a massive, deafening round of applause and cheering, seeking some kind of validation, right? The party looks up into the towering stands to see how many allies they have in this bloodthirsty crowd. The number? Exactly 0. As they look out into the glaring lights, the horrifying truth sets in. The roaring audience is made up entirely of the Drow. The very menace they were sent to track down and investigate had effortlessly captured them, just to use them as twisted, violent entertainment. I mean, just imagine fighting for your virtual life, burning through every spell, potion, and resource you have, enduring the literal trauma of nearly killing your friends, only to realize your epic, desperate stand was just halftime entertainment for the villains you were supposed to be hunting. The psychological realization is incredibly heavy, and the players behind the headsets, they are absolutely furious.
But, the game doesn't really care if they are furious. The party doesn't even get a moment to enjoy the taste of survival. Heavy magical guards shove them violently back into their cramped stone holding room. The heavy metal door slams shut, and the announcer's voice booms out through the stone again, telling the raucous crowd to get ready for the next match after a short intermission. The tension in that small room is practically suffocating. After barely surviving the arena, bleeding, completely tapped out of spells and abilities, you gotta ask, could things possibly get any worse for the Crusaders? Well, the answer, unfortunately for them, is a resounding yes, because they are about to be visited by the absolute most terrifying, overpowered player in the entire game. Out of absolutely nowhere, the claustrophobia of the stone room is broken by a blinding flash of white light. It's him. It's Genghis Khan. And what follows is a terrifying, surgical display of ruthless efficiency. He bypasses the Drow security entirely, teleporting directly into the locked holding cell. Before the exhausted party can even draw a weapon or cast a simple cantrip, he grabs Zato and teleports out. Instantly, Zato finds himself totally alone, ripped from his friends, standing in Genghis Khan's grim private dungeon. Genghis casually holds this glowing, ominous sword to Zato's throat and softly tells him not to move an inch, or he will end him permanently right there. Methodically, Genghis searches Zato's pockets. The player can only watch in horror as the glowing, pulsating light of their hard-earned server crystal is stolen away. Then, with another flash, Genghis teleports Zato back to the cell, grabs Drewindar, and repeats the terrifying process. He systematically isolates each party member, exploiting their exhaustion, until he singles out Barkin and rips the second crystal from his inventory. Having cleanly stripped the party of the ultimate prize in this server-wide event, Genghis Khan just smiles this wicked grin and vanishes completely, leaving them utterly and totally defeated. Now, it's really easy to wonder why a group of high-level adventurers didn't just fight back, right? Why didn't Sato, who is a proud and historically defiant paladin, try to parry the blade and make a stand? Well, we have to remind ourselves of a genuinely terrifying mechanic in the world of Infinitum: the insta-kill upgrade. Genghis Khan possesses this fiercely rumored, unique, weapon-only mechanical upgrade, and it does exactly what the horrifying name implies. It instantly, unconditionally kills any creature it strikes. And in Infinitum, death isn't just a minor inconvenience with a time-minute respawn timer. No, upon dying to this weapon, players permanently lose their character. All their equipment, all their gold, all their stats, gone. They are forced to restart the entire game at level 1. So the real-world stakes for the players sitting in their living rooms were incredibly high. Resisting didn't just mean losing a quick skirmish. For Zato and the others, fighting back meant losing months and months of real-world grinding and their entire character progression forever. Surrender was quite literally the only logical choice. So the aftermath is incredibly bittersweet. The Holy Crusaders lose their crystals, the very items they've spent a dozen sessions bleeding to protect. Genghis Khan now possesses almost all of them, which makes his terrifying path to taking over the entire game almost guaranteed. But the crucial flip side here is that they survived. Against all odds, they kept their incredibly hard-earned, high-tier equipment. They didn't suffer a total server reset back to a level 1 starting zone. It is a crushing, humiliating defeat, a total violation of their safety in a supposedly secure holding cell. But, hey, they are still breathing. However, silver linings don't really change the fact that they're still trapped in a locked stone room deep underground, waiting for the Drow announcer to call them out for a guaranteed deathmatch. They need a way out, and they need it now. But then, the tide suddenly turns, all thanks to a secret weapon Genghis Khan completely overlooked in his arrogant rush: the Instaport upgrade. This is Captain Dash 2's unique armor-only mechanical upgrade that she had just managed to attune to in the previous gaming sessions, and it is incredibly powerful, allowing the user to tear open 3 inter-server portals per day. Genghis Khan was so hyper-focused on looting those server crystals that he completely ignored the rest of their magical gear. Big mistake. Captain Dash 2, who is bruised and furious, realizes she has absolutely had enough of this terrible day. She channels the magic of her armor, using the Instaport to forcefully rip open a glowing blue portal right inside their locked anti-magic stone room. Bypassing the Drow arena and their captors completely, she instantly teleports the exhausted, traumatized party straight back to the quiet safety of the barracks in the Kingdom of Fantasia. So they stumble out of the portal, battered, bruised, and completely demoralized, collapsing right onto the polished floor of the barracks to debrief the captain of the guard. And the conversation that follows just perfectly captures the exasperating reality of RPG bureaucracy. On one hand, the captain is utterly amazed. He gives them massive praise, acknowledging that they survived a brutal, seemingly impossible gladiator battle against multiple high-level enemy factions. It's a feat of legendary strength. But on the other hand, the mission status flashes stubbornly in their UI: incomplete. Because they were ambushed in magical darkness, blindfolded, and then teleported out of a locked room, they still have absolutely zero geographical clues as to where the Drow actually came from or where their subterranean base is located. They went through absolute hell, lost their most prized magical possessions to the server's biggest villain, nearly murdered each other in the sand, and they didn't even get the satisfaction of checking the quest off their log. So the party drags their battered avatars down to the local tavern. And they aren't throwing back ales in celebration. No, they are sitting in stunned silence, just recovering. The intense emotional toll of Session 18 finally boils over into real-world frustration. Druindar the Ranger, the player who took the watch, who had to helplessly listen to his friends get incapacitated in the pitch black, stands up from the tavern table, and he drops this incredibly human quote, "I'm tired of going after the crystals. I'm going to the fantasy server to start a dragon egg business." It is this massive, somewhat comedic, but deeply, deeply sad emotional release. He is just completely burned out. The constant looming threat of Genghis Khan, the brutal nonstop arena fights, the violation of mind control, it's just too much trauma for a game. He literally chooses to become a virtual farmer, tearfully departing the guild to seek out a peaceful, mundane, productive life raising dragons. The remaining party members tearfully say goodbye, their numbers now permanently diminished after enduring the absolute worst day of their adventuring careers. Exhausted to their very cores, the remaining Crusaders port back to Valha's private, encrypted server. They just want to log off, take off their VR headsets, and escape the nightmare of the game for a while. But Infinitum isn't quite done with them yet. Just as their hands hover over the logout button, a jarring notification pings. An e-message has somehow bypassed all security and arrived right in their private sanctuary. Valha opens it and reads this massive, mysterious cliffhanger. "We need to talk. Let the Drow capture you again and tell them you wish to speak with Dracus." I mean, it is the perfect chilling end to a devastating session. Who in the world is Dracus? How on earth did he hack into their private server? What could he possibly want? And honestly, after everything they just survived, are the Holy Crusaders actually crazy enough to willingly walk right back into the bloody hands of the Drow? It leaves the players and all of us desperate to know what happens next. And that, my friends, is the terrifying brilliance of Infinitum. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next deep dive.